So, joining me today on Streaming the Steam for the Out of Character interview is a wonderfully talented musician, someone who, well, he really collaborates with just about everyone that I've known. He's a violinist, banjo, guitarist, I guess multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and just an awesome guy and really fun part of the steampunk community. It is my pleasure to welcome to Streaming the Steam, Nathaniel Johnstone. How's it going?
Going real good. How you doing, John?
Pretty good. Getting by, you know?
Yeah, it's been a long time. We should hang out sometime and do some collaboration or something.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
In person when the dust settles. You know how that is.
Yeah, hopefully. So I guess why don't you go ahead and introduce the audience for anyone who doesn't know who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, as John said, my name is Nathaniel Johnstone. I have been a musician ever since I was a wee lad. I think I started playing the violin when I was 8 or 9. I was that kid. And I just started collecting instruments. And once you learn one instrument, it makes it a little easier to learn another instrument. And then once you learn another instrument, it makes it a little easier to learn the third instrument. And then the next thing you know, you already know how to play a handful of instruments because they all just kind of do this. And I get such joy out of playing music that I love more than anything else, jamming with other people, collaborating with other people, being the sideman to other people's bands. Eventually, I got to the point where I was like, it's about time I started singing some of my own songs, because as fun as it is being in other people's bands, I'm dependent upon other people to get the gigs so that I can go do the shows. And I also found that once I started doing my own songs, I started doing this in 2013 was when I released my first album, Narratives. I had such a good time with it that I was just like, let's do more. And with each album, I bring different musicians in. I got the same core band, but I'm always bringing guests in. My friend Dogwood, I brought them in after the first album. For the second album, they were the primary second vocalist. And then I had you help out on the musical that we did. I had Frenchie and the Punk. I had Goodco. I really should hit up Steam Power Giraffe. They seem like awesome people. I'd love to do a thing with them. But I just write stories, songs, some goofy, some mythical, some a little serious. But I find that the songs that really get traction are the really goofy ones. Songs about krakens and about hats and about all kinds of crazy things. I've been doing a lot of songs about my cats lately. Who knew? But steampunks like cats.
Oh yeah. And I think there's no shame in goofy songs. And it's been really cool collaborating with you and sharing the stage with you. We've done things all over now in Florida and Atlanta and Tucson and
that show in Tucson was so much fun.
That was a blast. Oh yeah.
So earlier this year, I would say around about February, I was looking down the year calendar and I had 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at my calendar on the wall over there with all of these events with a little line drawn through them.
Yep.
I had 10 different gigs planned through September, and now my calendar is wide open, and I'm sitting here in my basement paradise, surrounded by instruments and cats, and practicing a whole lot of violin.
Sounds like a nice place to be.
It could be worse, I miss people.
Yeah, it's true. I at least feel like if I'm going to be, trapped at home and can't go anywhere, at least I can be in a studio and be productive, Yeah, the shows, obviously, you said all the shows for this year pretty much canceled or rescheduled. So how have you been proceeding when you can't go out and perform?
Well, the first thing I did was I started doing streaming shows every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time. I turn on the camera in my basement and I play about 45 to 50 minutes of songs. And I've been doing that for since the beginning of April. And that's been a lot of fun. I had to completely rearrange my basement. Normally, with my studio is set up where I've got all my instruments out, all my amplifiers out, all the gear that I want to use is immediately at hand so that if I'm struck by inspiration, I can just plug a thing in and go. But I've had to turn it into a performance space. And so my basement is now kind of a makeshift black box theater. You can see, if I pick this up, you can see right behind me.
Yeah.
But now I've got this wide open space where now it's a lot of fun just to play music. I'm taking the opportunity to between shows. In the months between shows, I take the opportunity to go back to the rudiments on my instruments, practice the violin, practice the guitar, work out things on banjo and on bass, because when I'm deep in touring season, I really don't get the opportunity to do that. I go play a show and then come home and then have to put the instruments away for a few days while I take care of whatever business I needed to take care of, and then I would turn around and go. So I've got all this time here where, you know, I can just go down into my basement and get through all of the rudiments and things. And that's a good way to get through that worry in your head in this sort of kind of uncertain time, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now that I have absolutely no impact on, but I'm looking at it thinking that's going to have an impact on me soon enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to a chance when we can actually get back together and perform in person again. I was just thinking, you know, I've seen fans comment off and on like it would be really cool if all the steampunk bands could get together and do a big show. And back when everybody was super busy, that was kind of like a pipe dream. But I feel like after all this, hopefully, if there's a time when everyone can get back together in public and perform, I would love for somebody to just put on a big steampunk music festival and just get all of us together for like 2 days. You know, that would be a blast.
And I'm just like waiting for that moment when it's safe to go out into big crowds and do this thing again, you know, in a way that's safe and sane. Mm-hmm. But live and in person, with a live and in person audience, there's just no duplicating that. Oh yeah. In your basement studio. I mean, it's still fun, but it's not the same visceral feel.
Yeah, not at all. It's nice being able to still perform and see the comments, you know, but yeah, there's definitely nothing like being there in person with, you know, a room full of people.
You know, there is a thing that I have noticed. This is sort of trying to find the silk purse out of the sow's ear. I have been seeing a lot of folks who haven't yet made a name for themselves in whatever scene or genre they are in. I've been seeing a lot of shows from people who are like, I'm going to start streaming, and I've been sort of whenever I'm trolling through Facebook and I see someone posting a link to a show, I click on it and watch it. And I've seen a lot of really, really neat new, you know, still young and still sort of figuring out how the songwriting goes. But, you know, when you have a whole new group of artists that are in this time coming out for the first time, I'm looking at that going, you go, this is awesome. Because for a lot of us, you know, we've already been doing this for years, and we already have a sense of what is in our minds of what a performance is. And this streaming online is a new experience for us. So we're having to wrap our brains around that. There are people for whom this is their first experience. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like, I hadn't seen that before. You know, these, like, obviously there's a lot of influencers who have been doing YouTube things already, and it's like as their primary medium. And now I'm being confronted with that as my primary medium, and it's daunting. It's a little. I haven't had stage fright in years, but when I started doing the streaming shows, I found myself getting in front of the camera and feeling that little feeling in your gut where you're like, wait a minute, am I nervous?
Yep.
And when I realized that, I in the back of my head, I was going, sweet, I'm doing something new. I'm challenging myself. This is great. Growth.
It's true. It's kind of new territory for us. I've known a lot of other musicians or artists that have been streaming for years, and I've been like, oh, that's cool. Maybe someday I'll do that. And now suddenly when I'm in a situation where I should do that, it's like a whole new learning curve to figure out, okay, how do you stream? How do you use this software? Like, how do these people do what they do? I'm so used to doing things a certain way. So it's cool, like learning more and just getting a whole new perspective on what you're already doing and figuring out how to do it in a new way.
Yeah. I remember a show that we did together where there was some awkwardness with was it your harmonizer pedal at the show, and we were on stage, we were in front of a crowd of people, and we had our heads, we had our composure, and we made it work in front of 300-400 people. You know, I I'm sure you were focused on your task. I wasn't even a little bit nervous.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I got this. This is totally in my wheelhouse. Um, and yet here, if in the process of doing a show, the screen stops or there's a problem with audio, my brain goes, I don't know what to do. I'm nervous. I can't make it work. And I've just got to do it a bunch of times until I can be that comfortable to deal with disaster without freaking out.
And I'm glad you were like that at that show, because I was pretty much at that. Like, I'm like, oh God, the show is ruined. Oh. Well, before we go, are there any ways that people can support you right now? Since, as always, we're not able to go out and gig right now. So how can people help you to keep on doing what you're doing?
The first one is my Patreon. And, I don't actually know the link off the top of my head, but if you Google Nathaniel Johnstone Patreon, you'll find it. I also have my Bandcamp, nathanieljohnstone.bandcamp.com. And that's got all of my songs on it. The most recent album is The Dubious Hat, and that came out in October of last year. So if you're new to me, that's the first one that you'll land on when you go to the Bandcamp page. That's the one you should get, because that's really what I'm all about these days.
It's a beautifully produced album. I think I already mentioned that
Thank
too.
you.
I love the acoustic instruments, and it's I could go on about it, but it's a very good sounding album.
I remember when you sent me the text saying how much you liked it, I was like, oh, he likes it. Yay. So I've got to do another one of those. But I've actually got to pick which project I'm going to do. I've got so many different things that are competing for my attention right now, and I'm let's just say I'm easily distracted.
Same. That's okay. I think that's the mentality of I don't know of all artists, but I think a lot of creative-minded people I know, their minds are in a million different directions at once, and I'll be in the middle of working on one thing, and then something else shows up, and I'm like, oh, let me go work on that.
Oh, and the urge to go to that new project is nearly overpowering. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to do this now. But wait, I have to finish this.
Sorry, I've got, about 100 unfinished songs just sitting around that someday will probably never get finished.
The ones that want to get finished will tell you to finish them, and then they'll get finished.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
Well, Nathan, it's been so good chatting with you again. It's good to see you again. I'm glad you're staying safe and doing well. And hopefully one of these days we'll be able to get together and do another show together in person.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for joining me on the show, and I will see you again soon.
Thank you for having me. Take care, John.